This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is the Ad Hoc Senior Center Building Feasibility Committee, March 9th, 2023 meeting. So welcome, everyone. We do have a quorum with 4 folks out of our 7 voting members, and Joan are one of our ex officios, and Ed should be joining us shortly, and 1 member guest, Tammy Walunas. So thank you for joining us as well. So any open time for the public while we're here? Okay, Tammy.
Tammy Walunas, College Highway. I thought the presentation was fabulous. I liked the information that you provided and showed everybody. I thought that was really, really great. I still have concerns on the things that I brought up. Mm-hmm. And so but very well done that night. So thank you.
And it's not, Tammy, that we're not aware that there's going to be some costs associated. I mean, we can't run a library without a lot of those other things. And, you know, it's my hope and dream that our community will be willing to support their 2,000 plus or more senior population moving forward. So in addition to whatever we can do to offset that, that's our goal. But that's kind of the next phase as well. So that's going to be an ongoing question that we will continue to address. Okay.
Yep.
And
thank you,
Tammy, for being the voice for so many people at
yes.
the meeting.
Yep. Yeah. You were kind of soft, Audrey. Could you repeat that, please?
Yeah, it's
yeah.
Thanks for being the voice for so many people at the meeting. That really was great.
When I had people texting me, "Are you there? Can you ask this?" And it's like, I just got here. Let me write it all down.
Well, that's good. I think
I want to echo that too, because I think that's so important. I know how involved you are with the community. So I think having you as a voice and as a collector of thoughts, I thank you again for being there. And the questions were really great.
Thank you.
Yep. And that's something we are not aware of. So
right.
Yes. Okay. And yeah, I mean, I think so. The next thing on the agenda, we do have thanks again, Tammy, for sharing. We do have a quorum now. So we're going to have a motion to approve the minutes. Nobody. So I move to approve the minutes if nobody else is going to. And do we have a second?
I second.
Okay. All in favor, roll call. This is a quickie. Darcy.
Aye.
Audrey.
Aye.
Andrew.
Aye.
And myself. Aye. Janet. Aye. Okay, great. Thank you, Audrey, for those as well. Okay, just a short debrief. Any other additional comments? And again, thank you, David. And I know the man behind the scenes, Devlin, for I think what came across as a wonderful presentation. Your energy, I think, was terrific, David. I mean, you felt like you were in your comfort zone. So that was terrific.
I told Devlin I was always a shy guy. But I found ways to pry it out of myself. And yes. Really, it's the project.
Yeah.
You know, it's that we're selling something we all believe in. And it was a great group of people, I mean, on the screen. And so that was nice. That's what we live for and do this for.
Okay. Thank you. And again, thank you. Audrey.
Yeah, I had a question. I remember us talking at the last meeting, and I again apologize for missing the March 1st, that you were going to actually bring a flip chart to take notes of all the questions and concerns and whatnot. Was that done?
Devlin, you can answer that question.
We didn't end up using the flip chart, but I took notes. So,
yeah. And we have the recording, Audrey, too. Yeah. So everybody has the recording, too. So
and probably should not have put the flip chart up, because then people say, oh, these guys aren't. So the optics were not good. I should have taken it down, but Devlin took notes. So. And
I think no one outside of our committee probably noticed that you didn't capture anything on a flip chart. I don't think any attention was drawn to it. So I don't think it was.
There are eagle-eyed people who will notice they didn't even bother writing down or comment. So I do hope, but I think we can integrate them into the report, and it'll be clear that we were listening.
So, Joan, do you know how many folks were in the audience, not counting us? Approximately.
Well, not counting us. Well, then that makes a difference. So everybody signed in. I think I have to send you that.
So about 50 people, is that approximately?
There was about 50 people, but that's us included. So.
Right. Okay. And there were, that evening, we understood there were about 47 people that watched. And when I went on to look the other day, there had been about 125 people that had watched it on YouTube. So, the people continue to address it. So it's great that it's available on e-media through the YouTube channel. So people can watch it at their leisure and fast forward through the things they don't want to hear about. So good.
And I had texted you about the comments that the representative would have been there, but he was in Boston. And then the senator was in an Irish dinner in another town.
Yes. So tough time of year, the month of March. Still lots of preparations for St. Patty's Day parades. Okay. But we will get to them, after some little time down the road and talk to them about grant opportunities and things. So, okay. Anything else on Monday's meeting? We're good. Okay. And I know Chris isn't here, but thank her for her great explanation about grants. She, I think, had a very detailed, has a better understanding than anybody about that. So I appreciate her doing that. And she was able to send a little bit of information on to David just recently. So I haven't even had a chance to read it, David. I just wanted to get it to you. So,
and my inclination is to put that in its entirety into the report as next steps.
Okay.
Which is something we have to talk about. When how do we want to talk about that? But it was very thoughtful. I mean, there's no reason for us to take possession of that. And I think, given who it's coming from, it's got good as is, it seems.
Yeah, she runs that grant committee, and that we've been extremely successful in town since they put that together. So that's been a huge asset. And I didn't send it out to everybody, but I will forward it out to everybody. We just got it this morning, and I was on a multiple dog walk, so I didn't get a chance to get it out to everybody, but I will share it with the group as well. So, a couple questions have come up. So right now in the contract, we talked about March 16th was kind of a key date that we were targeting, knowing that we left ourselves some cushion to, if we had to slip a couple of weeks because we needed to do a few things. And I think when we talk a little bit about the properties, I spoke with Ed and Andrew the other day, and we've been in touch with David and a little bit about the fact that maybe it's time, when I think you saw the recommendations as well in the engineer's report about the soil test and the test pits. And so I'd like to talk to this group about what they think about trying to extend that date so we can include whatever those top couple of spots are that we determine. We make sure that they're viable to support this facility and a commercial kitchen and so on. So any thoughts on that concept? Because the 16th is like next week, right? So
are you talking about doing the test pits and perks before we turn it over to the select board?
Yes.
I think it all depends.
Yeah, I mean, so we can look at it two ways. First, I think we all thought maybe we could do that once the study is agreed to, or approved by the attorney for the estate. Or do we need to do them in advance? Because we certainly wouldn't purchase property. But if our number one recommendation comes back and says it can't be supportive of our, requirements to build a senior center, then that kind of puts us back to the,
So
so.
with the perk, if we were to just do perks and not a whole study of soil, I mean, the perk would give a soil evaluation. So we would have an idea of what the soils are and the water table, and that's relatively inexpensive to just do perks. And it would only need to be done on 2 properties because one already has it. I think that's pretty.
Well, do we have the one, are you talking about the 89 College Highway that has it?
But I don't think it's in the location where we're proposing.
I think that one's way up and back, and it probably may not be the same soil up by the road. So is that what you're referring to, Darcy?
Yeah, the Clark Street
Yeah.
because it already has a perk. But if we do another one down below, yeah, I mean, it's relatively inexpensive to just do perks. And that would give us a pretty good idea. But I think if we're going to do that, we would also need to have some sort of, I know this is probably going to come up in a later question, but have Ed or the select board approach the sellers or landowners to see what they're looking at and what they're looking at for pricing, because, we don't want to invest money if it's going to be a crazy number.
Right. Other thoughts? Welcome, Ed. I know you're there.
Thanks, Janet.
I see your name.
Yep, I'm here.
Any other thoughts? Tammy, I know you had your hand up before. Yeah.
I loved just hearing you guys talk about doing the testing, the soil testing. That to me is a huge thing. And like you say, you don't want to start investing into property and looking and then find out that, it's not going to work at all.
Yeah, I think the comment, or you think the thoughts are, do we need it for this study, or do we complete it once we get additional funding and it's, that doesn't appear to I think us that it would be necessary for this study, but do we want to cover all of our bases?
I think it makes the study more genuine if we're kind of a pie in the sky. If we're just saying, well, we could do this, we could do that, we could do it here, we could do it there. But if we're getting a perk test on a property that's our first or second, pick, I think that should cement the idea that yes, this is going to happen. This is what we really are doing something for a future center.
David.
The engineers are pretty sure that it's not going to be a problem, on Clark Street. But in the very next breath, they're saying, yeah, you should do testing. So it's not as if significant due diligence hasn't been done, but having done a perk test is certainly more bankable. 2 other points. Spring, I think, tends to be a good time for perk tests. So now's the time to sign up. They may say, I can't do it for another 6 months. So if there's interest, probably should do it ASAP. Another is March 16th. We don't have the punchline for this report. There's been a ton of work. We think we know where we're going. It's going to take some effort. Let's just say it's 89 Clark to make sure we've covered the bases. We've recommended up front, recommended at the end. So we would appreciate more time. And I think, you'll see we've done a bunch of work on this. It's not as if we don't have a study. Everybody should read it carefully, including the beginning and ending, which we need to put in there so that it's a seamless document. This isn't months, but March 16th really squeezes us given where we're at today. So we would appreciate more time, and especially if it gives you time to at least, get signed up for a perk test. It's probably in everybody's interest.
So David, what's realistic, do you think?
Well, if we can get direction fairly shortly, and part of this is we want to run through it and get some initial input. Then we want to send it to you. And, probably a number of people should read every word. It's our job to take care of typos, but there's usually one or two that sneak in there, much to our embarrassment. But really, the real work is there anything that doesn't greases the wheel, that doesn't represent the process clearly in a transparent way, given that you know the town? That's a question for people to look at, and then and I think you're saying we try and return feedback really, really clearly. So we would need to get you what we're going to show you today in within a day. I'd like to check for typos. So Devlin, if things go end of the month, I mean, does that, but that would not include any information we can or can't get on perks, because it would probably take longer. So we could shoot for the end of the month for a finished document minus that, and then we'll see what the schedule is.
So, let's not squeeze it too much. Audrey, let's take these two things at length. Let's extend and let's talk about perking or soil test. Okay. So.
Right. I've got two things on the perk test. One is that we want to be careful that it doesn't delay the final report too far, and that, we risk actually missing our date. And second, we've always been showing the buildings up front, and we know we've got perk data in the back. Is there such a I don't know, pros and cons? I mean, what would be so bad about pushing the building back a little bit? I personally don't prefer buildings right on the street. I really don't. That's just me. And the thing is with that is that it might give us more flexibility if we push it off the street a little bit to do something a little bit better with parking. All of our parking scenarios have been that the parking is really, really far away for seniors.
Yeah.
And we kind of want to be able to make the most about getting closer parking for the majority of people that are going to attend. And, we can't do that if it's sitting on the road. We just can't. So, I'm just trying to think, should we have a little flexibility in that?
David?
And if Clark Street becomes the real site and a real project, absolutely, all of this should be looked at. What we tend to suggest is maybe it's less about pushing it right to the road. I mean, that's a good point, is that parking's not how the building presents itself, that the first thing you look at isn't a sea of asphalt. And on the other hand, there's the trade-off. If you completely surround the building with parking, it gets the parking as close as possible to the building, but you pay a price because you're surrounded by asphalt. There's no right or wrong answer. This is all an issue of trade-offs that ought to be studied. And my thought is, I mean, we could just move it back further from the road, but given that this is more a test fit than a proposal for a final design, that maybe that be deferred, unless if everybody said, hey, yeah, it's too close to the road, we could move the whole thing back. And then there are issues like snow plowing and it's further. It's all an issue of trade-offs. But we're hardly saying, nope, it's got to be exactly as shown.
Yeah, I think.
Darcy?
On the perk, I mean, to get a local person to do a perk, we have, several people in the area that could do all the perks in one day. And at this time of year, they're not booked out that far. And then that is, it wouldn't stop us from using somebody else for a design down the road, but that would get us a perk quicker, I believe.
So, and And I think that, yeah, again, we have to remember this is concept, and in the next phase, we can tweak the concept as long as we buy enough property to move it a little bit back or whatever. So, I mean, I know some of the concepts had pretty lengthy parking lots, and I agree. I mean, I think the building will stand out on its own, even if there's some parking in front of it. I'm not too concerned about that, but David?
Some of it's intrinsic in the site. 79 Clark is a longer, narrower site. So, almost by definition, the parking is going to stretch out and back. Again, not that it couldn't be reorganized, but there are some limitations, which is why I think 89 is probably a better site.
So, the end of the month or the first week of April, if we wanted to extend things, I think it still gives us, I mean, we built in cushion, obviously. So, if we could, instead of the 16th, which is in a week, either do it the 30th or the 6th. I mean, the week of, because they meet typically on Tuesday. So it would be Ed, are you going to meet every week for the next, till the budget's done? I know you muted, Ed. Sorry.
It will be every week on Thursdays only for budget.
Okay, only for budget. Every other week, though, on Tuesdays then?
Correct.
Okay, so if we were going to look, so your next official meeting is the 14th, the 28th, and then the 11th, correct? April 11th. So trying to get it on by the 28th, that might be a little tight. So is the 11th too far out? I mean, it's just going to be reviewed by the select board and then presented to the attorneys.
So if they could get a draft in 2 weeks so that the committee could review
We're
it.
going to see a draft today, Joan, I think.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah, and we'll send a hard copy. We're going to want to review it. If you had any immediate comments, we could pick them up, proofreading, and then send a PDF, today or Monday.
So from the group.
I'm sorry, tomorrow or Monday, I think would be the goal.
So do you think by the 28th, we could get perks and the study done, or should we make it April 11th?
Well, one thing to do is for us to do, let's do the 28th. I mean, there's not a vast amount of work, I don't think, to be done. We want to hear from you. If there are perks to information to put in, we'll put it in. If there isn't, the report will say perk information has been scheduled to confirm the preliminary findings or something like that.
Right. And certainly no property would be purchased without a perk in place ahead of time. So this is for the study again. And we do, like Darcy said, have the perk for further back on that particular property. That's the only one I think that we've had a perk for. That's on file, correct? Other than anecdotal information, again, from the health director, who basically seems to feel that the Zero College Highway, owned by the Labrie family, is sandy and very suitable. But again, the housing development that's being presented to the planning board kind of limits the spacing there. So that may make an impact on that. So let's talk about 328. Is there a motion to maybe move that completion date from our RFQ to March 28th? Anybody want to make a motion, and we can discuss a little bit more? Darcy.
Is that going to be contingent upon the perks, or are we putting that as a date, whether we have the perk information or not?
Well, based on what David just said, the perks, to be are scheduled at that point in time. So I don't know do we think that it could impact the study?
Maybe what we could do is shoot for the 28th, and hopefully by then we'll have a date of when the perks will actually be completed, and then we can make a judgment call on whether we wait or not.
Because the study could be done and we could wait 2 more weeks for the perks to submit it to the attorney. So it's not that they all have to coincide, but if the perk is done and as long as our recommendations line up, and since we have 1 perk on 89, even though it's further up, depending on where we put the location,
I wonder if it makes sense if they're getting the equipment out anyway to do 2 of them, 3 of them, 4 of them. I'm not sure. We can ask our engineers, or you can ask the people who do them. You know, maybe you want to get a number of them, given that the building could move up or down.
Oh, you mean in that one location, if that's the location?
Well, one closer to the road, one further up. And so there's the sense that wherever on that site that it's located, that there's enough information to know that it'll be viable. The other thing is you don't need to put, if the building's higher up, the septic system could be further down. So I don't know all the ins and outs, you know, of that, of what's recommended. I can ask our engineers what they would recommend, given that the building location could change.
So is there, because I'm not an engineer by any, trained educator here. So a test pit, how critical is that for our final decision for this study? Any thoughts, Darcy?
With doing the perks, there's going to be, you have to do 2 shallows and then the deep holes. So they're going to evaluate the soil when they do the perk. So that's going to give a very good idea of the soil, of the water table. So I think at this point, it would be wasteful to spend money on other types of testing for those areas, because and I don't see them hitting ledge on any of those sites but if they were to dig and hit ledge during the perk, we know it's there. It's an issue. I think the biggest thing is going to be the water table and what site is suitable for a system.
Well, should I ask, and this is good information, should I ask our engineers to make a recommendation on what they think is appropriate? Again, this is just my ignorance. Darcy, you may know more than I do, because we usually do more urban work.
Well, I think, ultimately, before you purchase, you may want to do more, but where this is just a very early on, we have to, get permission from the landowners to be allowed to do the perks. On the Clark Streets, it's not a big deal to do a couple perks. It's a little more money, but they're not taking the equipment on and off. To move to College Highway, I think it's worth doing it while we have everybody out there. You're going to have an equipment operator and the engineer that's doing in the Board of Health agent. And I don't know if that's something we can coordinate with the town to do the digging, or if that's something that's totally hired out private. I don't know how that would work.
So let's get back to the date, because we want to wrap that up and then we can go into the different properties, I think. So are we comfortable at this time with the March 28th presentation date?
Yeah, I make a motion for the March 28th presentation date.
I second it.
Second by Darcy first, Audrey second. Let me just do a quick roll call. Darcy?
Aye.
Andrew? Andrew?
You not hear me?
No, now I can.
Okay. Aye.
Okay, Audrey, sorry.
Aye.
And Janet, aye. Okay, because we need all 4 ayes here today to make sure we have them on record. Okay, so we'll move it from the 16th to the 28th. I think the public meeting prep absorbed a lot of time of our meetings, and probably a lot of time from Abacus. It was worthwhile. I'm glad we did it. I'm not sure we were sure we're going to do it when we put the date in, so it worked out well. So, okay, so March 28th we'll try to ask Ed to schedule abacus for the select board. And that would be at 6:00, David, okay? On the 28th. You're muted again, sorry.
David, you're muted.
6:00
It
to
can be,
present to the select board.
yeah, it starts at 6. I don't know, Ed, if it would be early on the agenda. I know you guys don't have to be muted unless there's a lot of noise in your background, so
There is, of course, here. So
it's a busy spot.
it's not a quiet day by any means.
Okay.
Yeah, it would be towards the front of the
Agenda.
agenda. We have possibly one other presentation that evening, but it would be up towards the front.
Okay.
I'm looking in my schedule, and we are doing a senior center recreation center for Bill Ricca, and I'm scheduled at 6:00 on the 28th to
Okay.
do a presentation.
That's a conflict.
Yeah, that's and I'm kind of the lead there. Joan, what are you laughing at?
No, I just, that comment was, what does April 11th look like? I know we don't want to push it
Yeah,
too late.
yeah. Having just said that, I mean, that's fine with me if that is still okay with you.
So do we amend the motion or have, I'm not sure the rules of law here. Do we have to have an amendment to the motion that we've already voted on?
And I apologize. I guess it didn't quite hit me that this was for a 6:00 presentation. So you know there it is.
Fine.
So,
I make a motion. Oops, sorry, Audrey.
well, I just have a question. So, if we wait until April 11th, is there any fear that we're going to get a nay? I mean, what are the ramifications if something doesn't go our way?
Well, I don't know what, I mean, we just present to the select board. I don't know that the way it's set up, that we need approval from the select board. Ed, I know he's multitasking like crazy. Sorry, Ed.
That's okay.
I'm trying to, it's a little bit different than public safety. I mean, we
I've
did.
got your charge right in front of me.
You're so good. And the other question is, do we have to withdraw the original motion or anything like that?
Why is,
Yeah, you would basically, yes, need to actually, if you voted on it, you would need to vote to rescind the previous vote.
Do I have a motion to rescind the previous vote? Well, let's wait till we check on whether the select board really has to sign off or if it's more of a formality and information for them.
while we're waiting on it, I just have a question. I mean, how quickly after the select board could we schedule with the attorneys for the estate and that would be my concern, not so much the select board, but how quick we can be with, in case they have questions for us.
Yeah, I mean, I would try to get it to them on the 12th, quite honestly. And how long do they, I mean, we can find out how long they feel that they need to actually review it and determine whether it meets the words of the estate.
I think that would be an important thing to check.
So I don't know, does the attorney review it and accept or decline, or is it a joint with the executors as well? Does anybody know legally?
My guess would be it would be both, but that's a guess. I don't know legally.
Are you back, Ed?
I hadn't left.
Oh.
I was just
Oh,
preoccupied reading your charge, our
No,
charge.
I mean, are you ready to respond?
I'm ready if you are.
Charge. What, and the charge is?
I don't see anything in there that says the select board has to approve it.
Okay.
So I would say that bring the results back and, and present them. I mean, we want their support as we move forward, but I don't see anything in writing that says that they need to vote to approve the findings or recommendations.
Okay. And the other question, Ed, I guess I could reach out to Amanda and see how long it would take them to review the study and determine whether it meets the.
Yeah, I think that would be the best bet.
Which? Take me reach out to Amanda.
To reach out to Amanda. Yeah.
Okay, so why don't we vote to rescind the 28th, since David's not here, that we can't do. I mean, if push came to shove, I guess my question is, since we don't need the approval of the select board, can we send it to the attorney before the select board sees it? Not ideal.
I was thinking of inviting the attorney to the presentation.
Well, no, here's what I would probably do is I would do them simultaneously. I mean, at least that the select board members have the information. That yes, it's ahead of any meeting or presentation, but they have it if they want to look at it.
I'm not quite sure I understand what you're saying. I'm sorry.
If you choose to send it ahead of the 11th meeting,
right,
send it to both select board and the attorney
at the same time.
Okay. I
mean, if you've got the information to send to the attorney, you've got it to send to the select board.
Right. Okay.
Correct.
Yes. Yep.
So therefore, I think we should still stick with the March 28th date.
But David can't be here for a presentation on the 28th.
But we're not going to do a presentation. We're just going to submit it.
Okay, so.
No, you're still going to do a presentation to the select board.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
We just once we get the final, we can send it to both, but we still need to do the presentation. So the report may be done before the 11th, but the presentation to the select board would be on the 11th.
Okay.
So I mean, we could say it needs to be done by the 28th, but we'll schedule for the select board, or we could pick, if we're not going to be at the 28th meeting, then we can say that it needs to be, to our committee, the final on the 30th. Do we meet on the 30th? We can. Or it can be to us by the 23rd, David, and 2 weeks. You think we could have a final by then, as long as we. Sorry, that mute thing is difficult. Sorry. I never unmute.
Yeah, no. That's my job. I think unless there are surprises, unless, you look at what we show you, I mean, it sounds like very shortly there will be direction on what our recommendations are. I mean,
yes.
On which site. Given that, and I'm going to run this through you, I don't expect, so I don't see any reason we can't. I don't think you will think that there's anything off base about the direction we're going with the report. So yes.
Or we could say instead of the 28th, that we have it ready by the final on the 6th of April. And then we can send it out at that point, because we're going to meet the 23rd and probably the 6th, if Abacus is still on board with us. And so we can tweak it collectively. I mean, in between, we can make our recommendations once we, get to close to final. We can vote to approve it on the 23rd if it's done. And if it's not done, we can do it at the next meeting on the 6th. And then at that point, send it out from there. I'm just thinking out loud, which I don't want to pigeonhole us into 2 weeks from now to have the final. Unless that's realistic. But the meeting for the select board won't be until the 11th. And we can always, we'll send it to both them and the attorney at the same time.
Yeah. And one of the things that is that we find with you guys and in every town we work with, it's final. Oh, except maybe it'd be better to do this and maybe it'd be better to do this. And you can't change that. You change that. And it's getting closer and closer to final, but people are making reasonable requests. So if we said we're going to shortly send this out for review, 2 weeks from today, we that we'll send it out for you for preliminary review in the next couple of days. We'll get preliminary comments back. We'll roll that in to what we'll have for the 23rd. We'll get a next round of comments and have it finished by the 28th, unless people think that there's more tweaking to be done. I mean, does that sound?
Yeah, I mean, the 28th is not as important because that was just the select board date. So whether it's the 23rd or the, did we rescind we had it on 20? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, is that we could leave the 28th date. Does that give you enough time to really do what you need to do? We just won't present for 2 weeks to the select board.
Yeah. So essentially have it done for the 28th, but yeah. But then if, again, I want to give you the opportunity, this is a picky group of people, and that's absolutely a compliment. It's not it's not a criticism. We want to make sure we give you what you want, that you have time to review it and we have time to do it. So I think we're talking about more or less the same schedule. And then the drop dead date is the 11th, but we hope to have it done 2 weeks before then. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, we have two meetings before the 11th, the 23rd and the 6th. We could say the final is on the 6th.
Yeah. And if we can get it final before then that's good. Let's aim to do it
no later than
the weeks before. And there's a little time for final tweaks if it's helpful.
Thoughts from everybody else? I'm not trying to dominate this conversation. So
No, that's totally fine. That's totally fine. I mean, it's going to be a play it by ear. It's going to be a very dynamic thing. So I make a motion to rescind the March 28th select board date for our presentation.
Second? I'll second. Okay. All in favor? Darcy?
Aye.
Audrey?
Aye.
Andrew?
Aye.
And myself, aye. Okay. And another motion to move the completion date to the final to the 6th, or what date did we decide upon? That's in 2 meetings. So I know it's in a month, but it's only 2 of our meetings. So 2 weeks from now, we really fine tune it, and then we have to have it in hand no later than April 6th. Thoughts?
That sounds reasonable to
And
me.
maybe we'll get some perks done before the 6th then.
Yeah.
To include in it.
So we need to make a motion to meet, to have the select board presentation for the 11th.
The 11th, the completion date is the 6th with the select board on the 11th. Is that your motion?
I so move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Darcy. Does that make sense for discussion? Anybody else have any input on that? Okay. All in favor, Darcy?
Aye.
Audrey?
Aye.
Andrew?
Aye.
Okay, and Janet? Aye. Thank you. Okay, does that make sense? So
Thank you.
4/6, select board 4/11, and if it's completed before the 6th, we'll get it out to both the attorney and the select board for their review prior to. We don't want to just toss it at them on the 11th anyway. So we want to, if we can get it to them a week in advance or whatever, it's always helpful for them to review. So, okay. Phew. All right. So property updates. So Zero College Highway, I will comment that there was one typo in the most recent Gazette article. And we've asked for correction to the owner to be Jim and Eugene Labrie, not the owner listed in the paper. So hopefully they'll have that correction. So we have 0 College, 210 College, 89 and 79 Clark. Updates based on the sketches and drawings that we sent out. Any thoughts on 0 College? That's up first. I mean, it may have the most perkable property, but has it got the best location? And with the proposed housing, go ahead, which is wonderful.
I think it would be kind of weird to have our new senior center in the midst of all of this housing development. It'd be almost like, well, it's next to so-and-so's house, rather than have it be totally by itself on one of the other sites. I'm just trying to picture it. And I just think it'd be weird.
And I will look at the property that's kind of carved out for the public safety to the best of our knowledge from what they've always discussed was going to be 3.5 acres. This lot is like 5.33. So if we were somehow able to squeeze in a senior center there, that would put us under 2 acres. And then it's private property all around us. I mean, it may be green and it may be beautiful, but it belongs to many other people. So that's my concern. And we probably would end up sharing some parking area. So those are, I mean, I don't know those are just my comments. Once I saw the land, I think it's wonderful. Somebody's proposing a 55 and older community with 4 affordable units out of the 44. I think that's terrific. So, but I'm not sure we can do it all in one location, but Joan.
I'd like to put my 2 cents in. So I agree with Audrey's perspective. I mean, I've been in other communities where centers have been built closer to senior housing so that people could walk to them. But it seems like, why would you favor that area? But I agree with Janet that there's not enough room. I think the standalone where there's room for parking and there's room for growth if we had to, but it looks like that development takes up a lot of that area. So I really do say it may not be the ideal spot anymore.
Yeah. And for people to go out and walking, like we were trying to consider our outdoor activities, like walking paths and things like that. And you're going to be walking through everybody's neighborhood now.
Any other thoughts on that? Either Andrew or David or Darcy or Ed?
I agree. I think it really puts it in a tight spot. And if we were to take commercial spots in the front, we're entering and exiting on College Highway on the bad curve, which isn't ideal for seniors.
David?
Yeah, I mean,
oh, go ahead, Andrew. I'm sorry.
No, I agree too. I mean, it seems like just a more compelling spot towards the more center of town, I guess. And it would, I agree with, I think it was, I can't remember who said it, but that is a tough curve to navigate even without having traffic coming in and out of either a neighborhood or public safety complex or senior center. So I think adding all of those elements to that area would be tough. And there was a compelling statement made by Jim at the meeting, just kind of painting that picture of, going to a boundary, going down the route.
You're hard to hear, Andrew. We're losing you a little bit. Sorry.
Long story short, I agree with everyone.
I mean, and let me see. David, you.
Well, my comment, and I sort of conveyed this in a couple of emails, if you planned a senior community around a senior center, like you plan a golf community around the clubhouse, it could be wonderful. But that does not appear to be what would happen here. It appears it would be plunked on a lot rather than be the center of the action it could be. And then in which case, yeah, kind of weird. Like, what's it doing here? That would seem to be the direction this is going.
Okay. And so 210 College Highway, I'm just going to read what the engineers collected from the health director, that the town hall site would be challenging for multiple reasons, one of which is that the soils are challenging and there's areas of shallow ledge. So it doesn't sound like recommendations from the health department would necessarily feel that that's a good site. And I think that's important if we can include something like that in your study, David, because I think that that's coming from the local experts, right? And as Rini stated at the meeting, the public safety tried to go there and there was a lot of challenges. And there was also a comment made, I think, about putting a septic under the parking lot isn't ideal. So those would kind of, plus 2 stories on the 210 College Highway. I know we were going to try to do a matrix and score these, but I think kind of throwing the development into the middle of at this late in the game kind of skewed a few things, right? But any other thoughts on College Highway? I mean, those are not from our perspective, but what, our official health department folks have said. So.
With 210, a major challenge is there's a fire station there. And it's anyone's guess, I think, when it'd be an actual building site.
Plus, I think the parking would overlap with town hall. There's the road going between the 2 areas. And I think it would be not the safest location because we have to, as we do today, share that parking lot. It would be bigger, maybe, but it would still need to be probably shared to some degree to get enough space for the senior center. So any other comments on 210?
I agree that it's not a ideal site. I mean, there was ledge found in previous when they did the public safety work earlier on that, in the wetlands, all the other issues that have been mentioned. It just does not seem like a site that we should move forward with.
Okay. Andrew, any thoughts?
Can you hear me better now?
A little bit. I'll let you know.
Okay. No, I mean, I agree with what Darcy said. I think it's I think it's kind of almost too much trouble. I don't think the juice is really worth the squeeze, really, for 210. I feel like the narrative that what I was getting at before was the narrative that was painted by Jim was such a compelling, such a compelling one, right?
Yeah, I don't think any of it, I won't talk about any of you guys, but I could never have painted that picture and told that story better than Jim Cini did that night. So, okay, so that brings us to just some kind of questions on, so if we're going to talk about doing soil tests. So now there's 89 Clark Street. So people's thoughts on 89.
I think we're going to have to be a little bit cautious on 89. And, one of the reasons I bring up about pushing the building back a little is, like Libby and I noticed last fall, there's standing water near the roadside. So, it wouldn't surprise me if it does perk better a little farther back. Yeah. And
as David said, maybe we do a test down by closer to the road and one sort of halfway up, because the one further up is already done. And that would be really, I think, difficult for us to get approved by, the highway. That would be a long road for the highway department to have to plow. So if we could find a midpoint that perks better. Okay. And any other thoughts on 89 other than Jim Cini's wonderful vision? Ed, is your hand up or are you doing something else? Okay.
Wasn't
It's
that
up.
plan?
It's up. Okay, let me let Ed comment.
I'm just going to say this, and it's actually for either of the Clark Street, properties, and it's one of the reasons that when you and I were talking earlier, I actually suggested that maybe we do one or two perk tests on the one or two preferred properties, only because one of the things I would not want to see us get into is, okay, and if you go through the perk test and find out a particular property, the soils aren't adequate, and you end up having to do tight tanks or pump systems and end up with a property that may cost $250,000 to put in a septic system and be expensive to maintain. Does that put Zero College Highway, which may perk better, back into the mix, or does it just say, well, maybe it starts the whole process over? So that's actually my comment on all three of those properties.
Okay. Andrew, were you saying something and I missed it, or no? Did you wrap up?
Yeah, no, sorry. Was there still a plan to sort of have a greater development of that whole area? The only reason I ask is I thought I remember the landowner speaking to, he wanted to redevelop that land, and from what I remember, the rear part of that property was going to be a part of what was going to be developed, but I could be misremembering.
He wanted an easement to access the back of his property. So in our plans, we've showed a 50-foot easement. We've acknowledged that. And I would assume if it was bought, that would be all codified.
And in his property, he also owns the property behind it. So I think he wants that property be probably behind that lot on Clark to be developed industrial at some point in time in the future. And that's not so much that particular piece.
All right. Sorry to make you rehash that.
No, that's good clarification. Any thoughts on 79?
Falling off Thursdays. So
do we discuss maybe having that perked as well?
I think.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, didn't hear you talking still. I think while the equipment and everybody's there, it's not a big deal to perk the next door a lot. I feel that one possibly is going to be wetter. So I think it definitely will make a difference on judging those lots. So I think, if we're going to be out there with the equipment and with the engineers, that we should definitely do perks on both sites, and maybe, an upper and lower on one, and then the lower on 89 that's already been perked. So we have two on each spot.
Anybody else? Any thoughts? Makes sense. So I'm just going to make this comment in that if we request, which is the next thing on the list, to see if Ed would have permission to talk to the landowners both about purchase prices and permission to perk, then, if something comes up kind of crazy high, and we thought that was our biggest, opportunity, or our most favorite opportunity, and another piece of property, Zero College, is either donated or a less expensive price, and it's smaller, I think, we'll have to decide, how do we weigh those together? I mean, do we try to go for this one and spend more money? Do we, settle for something not ideal? Or if we're going to do it right, do it right. So, I mean, those are kind of questions that I have in my mind. Darcy?
I would think at this point, while Ed's contacting the landowners, we already know the price for Marmon Keystone. Have Ed contact Zero College Highway and 89 Clark and see what they had in mind, what their prices were, And then we'll have all the equal information from all parties. And then we can make a true comparison.
Darcy?
Because if,
Or I'm sorry, Audrey, just a minute. I'm sorry, Darcy, are you done? I'm sorry.
yeah, I was just going to say, because if, say one lot is 100,000 and the other one's a million, then that would balance out the septic. But we don't know that. And I think we should include the College Highway just to have a conversation with them to say, what are your thoughts and what would be the price that you would suggest?
I don't think we should eliminate College Highway, zero college. Audrey?
Yeah, and I think with 79, last time we chatted with them, it appeared that they were willing to actually sell us less. So I'm not sure if we should try to engage a conversation of, how much would it be for 6 acres, something like that, to try to get the cost down a little bit. So one of my concerns about this entire process was, like, this is just a feasibility study, and granted, it'd be nice to have it kind of like pinpointed down to certain properties. But if this doesn't happen for, 5 years, all of these properties could be sold and gone out from under us anyway. So, if all of these fall through, I don't think we have to be too concerned, because they could fall through down the road anyway.
Well, but the town could also vote to purchase one of those pieces of property immediately.
Yes.
I mean, we don't have to wait 5 years to purchase the property, as Ed pretty eloquently stated the other night. We have, if we do, and when we do get to 2.5, we'd have to go to town meeting and vote approval, and get that done, and then continue to move on with the process. So we don't lose, we have the money to do that, which is, thank you, Mr. Parsons, for that. But, so, I mean, I always felt like, yeah, if we can say we're going to do this one, but yes, down the road, it's gone. Then we're like starting from scratch, not quite, but certainly from a location standpoint. But it is that possibility that we could, the town could vote and approve us to go ahead and purchase the property. So, Darcy?
I agree. That would be my hope, is that we narrow it down and negotiate what the prices are going to be. And once we have if we get the money from the estate as we're anticipating, then we would move forward swiftly to get into a contract and purchase something before it was lost, and have all this work be for nothing.
Right. Yes. So maybe we could get a warrant written by April 6th so we could get it on the annual town meeting. No, I probably not. Okay.
Not before the perk test.
No, that would be after. So can we just vote to request that the select board allow the town administrator to discuss property purchase price with landowners, as well as gain permission to perk? And how many lots? 0, 89, and 79? And how many perks?
I make a motion for that. And the only other thing I'd like to add is that on 79, a price, for a partial or for the whole thing, just because that backland really is not going to be worth anything other than it's a path to us to the bike path.
Right. Okay. And what was I just going to say? Sorry. And 210, we kind of know, we kind of know that 210 is pretty much off the table then. Everybody has agreed to that. So do we want to, can somebody make that motion to request the select board's approval at their next meeting on Tuesday?
I'll make a motion.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I second.
Okay. Audrey, all in favor? Darcy?
Aye.
Audrey?
Aye.
Andrew?
Aye.
Janet? Aye. Okay. So Ed, is that possible to do next week?
Haven't posted the agenda yet, so I will be adding that in a few minutes.
Okay, great. And that would be the 3 landowners then, because you can talk to yourself about 210 College if you'd like.
Gee, thank you.
And number of perks you think on each property? Well, we know, first of all, I think Ed needs to talk to the owners of Zero College to find out what their plan is based on the plan that they've received. So we're making some assumptions now based on what we see carved out, but to confirm what their thoughts were, and then get back to us on that. And then if I guess we should perk that anyway, depending on where their vision was that we put the senior center. I know, when we first met with them, they said, let us know where you want it. And then after that came this proposal from the builders. So we're kind of moved over a little bit and truncated. So let's try to perk that as well. I think we should perk that area that if that's what they were thinking, and that's what Ed discovers, to move forward, perking that land that they're looking at, if it's there, and the two perks on 79, 2 perks on 89. Does that make sense? Yes, Audrey?
Almost in my mind, it doesn't make sense, only because, for the extra cost of, loading the equipment all back up, unloading it all over at Zero College. I mean, it's really our last choice. It's really our last, ditch effort, I guess. But it's not ideal. I mean, at this point, I'm just keeping my fingers crossed that 79 and 89 come through. And I would definitely do those first. And I'm not, I'm just not convinced we should spend the money on Zero.
Okay.
What does anybody else think?
Doesn't the planners eventually, they're going to have to do perks on all that anyway? So.
Absolutely, they're going to.
But that's going
let
to
them pay for it.
I mean, they're not meeting to the planning board until April 15th. So that perk is going to probably be, and it's not going to be the exact area that we're at, certainly close enough. So I'm assuming they haven't done any perks there yet, Darcy?
They haven't done any perks, but when we met with Jim Labrie, he said they had done some just test digging,
Mm-hmm.
and it was all gravel, which I'm pretty sure that whole area is pretty gravel up there. So it more than likely will have a better perk than the other ones. I don't think that has the water issues there that the other lots possibly could have. So yeah, it's hard to say.
Yeah, the engineers, every indication from everybody is that perking it's really good for septic.
And I'm just afraid that if we're forced to choose Zero College, that we may not be happy with it down the road. I mean, we're going to shoehorn something in there. It's going to be smaller. The traffic on that street, nobody's going to like. I'm just very hesitant to even keep going forward with Zero College Highway.
Okay. So we cannot have it perked, but I think Ed should definitely have a conversation with the Labries, because even if it's number 3, I think we just need to have the information, because if the town says, why aren't you going with A instead of B, or B instead of A, then we need to be able to explain that. And I do agree with everything you said, Audrey. I think it will depend on the price of the land and the price of a septic in that area. And can you tell from a perk test kind of how much more expensive a septic is going to run versus Darcy?
I mean, the numbers will give you a rough idea, but it's really going to be the size of the building, what the flow is per day, et cetera. But it'll give you an idea whether it's, a 2-minute perk or it's a 30, 40-minute perk. You'll know this is going to be a lesser system. This will be a more expensive system, but you won't get until you do the design of the building and then the design of the flow rate. You won't know an exact price.
So we can get sort of an estimate. David?
Yeah, we did talk. We provided information on the building. to our engineers, and based on, not on perk tests, but on other available information, they told us approximately the size of the leaching field that would be needed, which I think is now dotted on the plans. And putting 210 aside, their sense was, there wouldn't be any deal killers on 79, 89, and certainly not zero. And let's just say it was another $100,000 on 89 as opposed to 79. It's kind of a drop in the bucket, if you'll excuse the term, in terms of overall project cost, that they didn't see any kind of hardship, exorbitant, out of line costs on either of those properties. Again, to be confirmed, but some due diligence has been done.
Okay. But they do still believe that we should do at least the Title 5 or the perk. I mean,
yeah. No, they're saying, trust but verify. They'd be very surprised if there were significant problems, but things happen.
I guess, Ed, the request would be to the landowners and then get a better understanding at zero with the new developments there, what their vision was, and then let us know, and maybe it wouldn't need to be perked, and then we have to make a decision if that less than 2 acres in the middle of a development would be ideal. But should we include the town? Should we have abacus? So first of all, we don't have money to do perk tests, correct? So that's one thing. To the best of my knowledge, we spent our 60,000 that we haven't spent it all, but the check is in the mail, David. And so we are going to need to potentially go back to the attorney for an approximate number of dollars or support of perk test. So that would be like 4 tests, 2 on 79, 2 on 89 to do. So between Ed, Andrew, and myself, we'll reach out to the attorney, see if we can get the funding to do that. I think we still have money in that part that was designated to the COA. So
there should be, and I would at least think that those tests would fit into doing a feasibility study and be eligible. But that's my opinion.
Okay, because that's sort of what that is. Okay, so I'll reach out to the attorney and get confirmation that we have that. And then once we do, is it better for the town to do it? Is it better for David's engineers to work with somebody to do it? Since they kind of had, they sketched out leach fields and things, or what would be the best process to do that?
Let me reach out to some of the vendors that are here, and David can do the same thing. And I think probably the key will be how soon could you do this and the cost. So,
Yeah, I don't think our engineers have done a report. I passed the report on. I don't think they have any value to add. They're not based in the area. Go with the local people.
Okay.
We went with non-local people to have a more objective oversight over the issues. Now it's the local people who should take over.
Okay.
So, and Janet, you're going to reach out to the attorney about the money for the perk test, or is that Ed?
No, I will reach out to her and copy Ed and Andrew on that. Okay. And then unless Ed decides that maybe that request comes better from town administrator, doesn't matter. Okay. I'm going to take that off his plate then, and I'll do it. And then we'll talk about maybe 4 perk tests on 2 different lots. And whatever that cost is, we don't have a cost right now, but approximately, does anybody have an approximate number? I mean, 20,000 carry it, or Darcy?
If we're using local people, we're under 5,000
per test.
No, for all of them.
Okay. All right.
It's relatively inexpensive. I mean, we're for a homeowner test, which is going to be basically the same thing because it's the same test. It's under $1,000.
Okay. And then as soon as I get the green light, we'll ask Ed to reach out to the local vendors, or maybe we can do it simultaneously. We'd at least get an idea of how long that will take.
And we'll just need 3 because we already have the upper one on 89.
Well, so we need one by the road or one middle?
Yeah, David was thinking one in the middle would be a good idea because then we don't have to push the building all the way back, just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
I mean, I don't know how far the perk test covers in a piece of property.
I think I'd get the professional input that here's what we want to know. We don't know where the building is going to be located. Make a recommendation. Here's the report by the engineers. Make a recommendation as to what we should do to be certain as we can be without drilling holes every 20 feet. I think they'd be able to advise on that. Darcy, would you agree with that?
Yeah, and they've, been out there if they start digging and something's not looking good, they'll move to a different area while they're out there and not continue. They don't necessarily have to, once they dig, that's their spot. It can move around if they find an issue.
Okay. All right. But we first need permission from the owners to do that, right? Mm-hmm. So, all right. So are we done with motions? We voted to let Ed do his thing. Thank you, Ed. And we're going to take a look at David's draft report.
Okay, but let me ask you a question.
Sure.
In this report, in the final reversion, there will be a recommendation for the number 1 property with backup properties, right? And this committee will take a vote on that?
Yeah, I would like to have more than 4 of us here to take that vote. I mean, even though it would be a majority.
Yeah,
I think,
okay.
It's unfortunate that three members were not available today.
Yeah, okay. But that's the plan. Okay, because ultimately that's all anybody cares about. The report, we're pretending people care about it. We care about it. Everybody cares about it. But people will go to first and last page and see. Okay, so let me do.
Is everybody good for a little bit longer? Hopefully. Okay.
And I'll go through this pretty quickly because I'm going to pass it on. What are you seeing?
We see that we see.
Are you seeing the report?
No, the report just went away. Your desktop is there. So here's
now do you see it?
Yep.
I'm not sure why sometimes it shows up on one screen. So we have a title page. We have so we have clients who are really care a lot about what's on this back page, and I'm not sure. So you should look through. Are there other people or groups we want to credit in this? So this is just a start on this, and probably the wording could be changed. We have a table of contents.
So let me ask you a question. Do we put anything here that's made possible by the estate of David Parsons? Do we need to acknowledge him? So maybe it's in here, David. So
I would say we just threw this stuff on this page. I would ask that you think about who should get credited in what way. I don't need to be credited. Devlin doesn't, but the people who pay the money are more important to note on here than the people who did it. But we want to note that this is our work product. So, that's for you more than for us. So that this is something for everybody to think about. We can come back to this table of contents. So the overall format is we have for each of these sections, we introduce the issues. So here's a write-up. May add some verbiage, may edit it. You will get a chance to read all of this. So summary and outline recommendations. And then I think we're going to follow up once there's clear a focus on a site. We may have some pictures that represent that. Yeah, Audrey.
So I know you like the background being black, but if somebody wants to actually go and print this,
Devlin and I discussed that. I don't know where Devlin is. I don't see him. And And I said exactly that. You use up a whole cartridge of toner. And I said, let's just leave it here. Let's leave it black. We can turn it to white if the sense is people are actually going to print this. And I think you're right. Generally, reports, we do white on black. And so unless anyone, really good point. So do you want us just to do black on white or color on white?
Devlin is there, by the way, so.
Okay, I just don't see him on the screen.
Yep. He didn't disappear.
Yeah.
Let us think about that, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it looks pretty, but I agree with Audrey and in a toner based, as long as I don't know that people would want to print it off. Certainly we'll have to think about that, I think.
Yeah,
I agree. I don't want to waste a lot of toner.
Yeah, if 99% of people are going to look at it on a screen, the white on black, is kind of striking visuals, which doesn't hurt, but we're happy to change that. So
we're going to probably give hard copy to the select board.
Select board, right. I think you do have to switch it for the hard copies.
Okay. So maybe we just switch everything to white background. Ed, I think you're muted. Are you saying something?
I can throw it out that I can send an electronic version to the select board, and we can throw it up on the projector in the select board meeting.
Yeah. And my inclination is not to do a white on black and a black on white. Let's just do one, and we can do it either way. So we would follow this once we have clear recommendations. We'd have a page or two probably of pictures that we would put in here. So here's the background for the report. And here again, there isn't all that much to say. If we're missing important text, we can add it. We can also add any kind of background graphics. We can make the type bigger. We don't want to have pages that are more or less blank. And a question would be, are there pictures to go with this? Existing facility, we're going to have existing facilities photos. We talk about some of the issues here. Preliminary site assessments, this is the background. We talk about where they're located. We identify where they're at, possible site options, programming input. Again, a sort of synopsis. We talk about.
Excuse me, David. Can you go back to the property layout? Yeah, go forward. On College Highway, on the 0 College Highway, how do we show? How do we show, what we're trying to anticipate? I guess you're going to get to that, but now with the new development in there.
Yeah, and that's a really good question. And I think this is the kind of thing up in the captions. A lot of these captions at the top are old captions. I think they need to be changed to
this is kind of
note the issues. Right. Because some of this, it could be at the meeting today, people said, oh, let's go for this site at 0 College. That's not what people are saying. So I think this is a way to follow on what was talked about today and kind of note that one of the questions is, which site is it? It hasn't been tied down. We've looked at options, all are problematic. So.
And it changed, certainly our what was available changed it very late in the process. So.
Yeah.
We spent a lot of time working on that and now it's all different. So.
Yeah. And the fact that it continues to change just makes the more uncertainties for a property that there are serious questions about and the lack of certainty about surrounding development. And there are a couple of development options in the PDF we got. It's just one more reason not to consider it. So having heard today, I think we'll try and address that question. Programming input. These are the results from the exercise. Here we describe some of the things that happened. We go through all this information. If this is, I'm not sure this needs to be quite this big. And again, we're back to the question of, if it's a print document, you don't need a whole page for this. If it's being projected, it's nice to say, 255 to 41 and push it in people's faces. So there are questions like too big or not. This is all this is basically all stuff you've seen. We're compiling the entire story in one place.
We also, David, we want to ask you all if you prefer to have all 10 or at least most of the survey questions in the report instead of just the select few we presented to the community.
Good question.
I think we'll get back to you on that. I don't know if anybody has, I don't know that we need all 10, but I'm just one person. So.
Yeah.
I don't think it hurts to have all 10.
Okay. I was going to say it doesn't have to be small. I mean, if we include everything we've done, maybe you're right, Audrey. Yeah. Anybody else think one way or the other? Can't hurt. And it doesn't, it's, to me, it's probably going to be more for a readable version than a projected version.
Yeah. In which case we can condense this down. You can put, 4 of these on a page rather than 2. This is still kind of a projected version. And it's quite, so again, something to think about what we'd like to do one format, but if things can be smaller, and if the assumption this is not going to be in a room full of 100 people, it needs to be really readable, then we can condense this. Programming options, talk about the different kinds of options, talk about a bigger version and a smaller version, conceptual design options, bigger version, smaller version, site and program test fits, and describe the process in some detail, and go through sort of site by site. And then we're putting on this, like we're going to put the wetlands on and the topography on, that'll be on here, going through the different, and I think there'll be some text on top, a sentence or two describing it. I don't think we need more than that. And then here, so this is where we get to Zero College. And it could be all 3 of these are on one page, because none of these are kind of certain. More of this is background scrutiny, whereas this is like we're really doing a test fit. Yes, maybe we'll move this further down on the sheet. This is kind of more real in some ways than Zero College. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, do we include at some point the changes that we got in March that would kind of make all this
preclude it? Yeah. But I think I agree that having them on the same page might be helpful. And then with a addition to, this land may not be available to us anymore.
Wait, I'm sorry, say that again. These areas that we designated aren't necessarily available to us. I mean, one is too small, the first commercial.
Yeah.
The second commercial now overflows into the development, so that becomes too small. So the commercials are kind of left out at this point.
Yeah. I think maybe here what we should do is show the overall site as it is. And definitely we have this, well, somewhere we have it located on a plan where each of these sites is. We should probably put that in, condense this down so each of these is into page, and then maybe we follow up with the latest plans and note that this property is being developed. It raises the uncertainty, of this, and sort of get up to date with what's happening. And does that make sense
Yeah, I feel by keeping it in, it shows that we had put the work in on this site. It just, unfortunately, the landowner's plans changed late in the game. So it's no longer, this isn't available possibly after Ed has his conversation, but we did look at it and we tried.
Yeah. So then, site engineering assessment, I think these, These are pretty understandable. These are not so arcane that people can't look at those and say, oh yeah, due diligence was done. And then if we get perks, that information can be added here.
Do we include the cost of the properties if Ed is able to get that in the study itself, or?
Well, now we're at that point.
Yeah, sorry.
So here we're talking about this decision-making matrix.
Mhm.
I think there should be a narrative, and I think the discussion of these sites was a really good discussion. And I think that, the comments of this committee, maybe before we have this matrix, and this is just a kind of graphic way of summing up what people talked about. And then, if they're prices, there should be a page on that, about how that might impact it. If 89 Clark is $10.2 million, we might want to note, that is as part of the evaluation criteria.
It is the last item there, right?
Yeah.
So is this an updated, or is this because it's hard to see. So is this an updated matrix, or is this the matrix we saw in the past?
I think it was updated once, but hasn't been updated again.
Because I know we eliminated the three on the right, correct?
I'm sorry, what?
We've eliminated the ones on the to my right.
These. Yeah, we crossed those out for the community presentation.
Yeah.
Just to show that we haven't been discussing. But we can do it for this too.
But I think we crossed them out. But I think the thought was that this should be part of the evaluation, and maybe there are more reds. I mean, I don't think there are enough red blocks here to make it really clear why these were taken off the table.
Okay.
But obviously, bright green for 89 Clark. These are not waving their hands about being good choices. Public process, this could come earlier, and maybe public process comes earlier and we go through the different events. And again, I think we're going to add a sentence or two up at the top in addition to this. So there are a few more words. What we've heard, we've had reports that had like 3 times as many words. And what we've heard is the more words you have, the less chance someone is to actually read this. So we're trying to keep the words, there may be a few more, but not so many that no one wants to deal with it, that this is basically a picture book approach, but it builds confidence that all the things were done. That's what we're trying to do here.
Devlin, could you send me a couple pictures, some of the pictures you took at the community?
Yeah,
meeting?
I can do
mind?
that.
Thank you. Because we have the Senior Center newsletter coming out, Joan, right? So maybe we can squeeze a picture or two in. Okay.
And this makes just the point. We did want to hear from people. We got the word out. And then forms and spaces. We talk about design is important. We talk about, different, interiors, exteriors, cozy nooks. We need recreational spaces should not have. There's clearly some editing that needs to be done here. This is not part of the recreational space, so we'll take some of these out. These are the kinds of spaces we considered, and there'll be a note, that these are just ideas of the range of options that are important, and once this, the project moves forward, that's the time to really explore in depth, what the design is.
Is there an in conclusion summary at the end of some sort? So that
and
I just want to make sure.
What happened to recommendations?
Well, David, we talked about that because we weren't sure if we were going to do the outline of the recommendations at the beginning or just do the full recommendations and suggestions at the beginning.
Yeah.
Since that's kind of the point of the report, or if we want to locate that at the end of the book.
Yeah. So
that's, I guess, something you can help us inform.
Yeah. So one of the things to do it is up front. and with the idea, all you need to do is read one page. And right, Devlin, that's a good point. I think you do want to tell people up front what the recommendations are, and then do you need recommendations at the end as well, or do you want to tell the story in two different ways? Is this a very abbreviated version and more extensive discussions? And then the sort of whole decision-making process, you could say, well, that's really where the recommendations come from, and that's the punchline. The punchline kind of comes here, and this isn't really decision-making matrix. Could be decision-making process, of which this is one component, the discussions that you had earlier today, and then with conclusions. So it's just that tells the conclusions and recommendations are in the context of the process, but then we shift we also have the punchline up front on the first page.
So I did see something about a 23,000 square foot facility in one of your thingies. So number 1, I think, is keep going back.
Yeah, I think that was, because there's a larger version and a smaller version.
Yeah, we were never at 23,000, right? So
yeah.
It was like numbered 1, 2, 3 or something, and I just happened to glance in. So.
Yeah.
Yep. Next. Yep. That. So number 1, at 23,000 square feet to provide services needed over the next several decades. So on it, number 1.
Yeah. So it seems like there are two big issues: site and program, and then this includes site and program.
So 3,000 square feet isn't representative of the building, right? We're looking at 12.3 or whatever.
Yeah. What is the 23,000?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to.
Oh, well, what is it? And that's all of these are about 23,000, 23,500. That's what we're using,
including the parking and everything. You mean?
The building itself is 12.
I'm sorry.
12,000.
I'm sorry. My mistake. Yes. 12,000. Completely my mistake.
So is there a way to say, if it's a 12,000 square foot senior center layout, approximate cost for that? I mean, I know
we need building cost.
Yeah. I mean, including, I don't know if it includes equipment and, or whatever, but I think as part of the study, I'm just wondering if that's going to be required.
So total project cost for a public facility is, and I think I might have mentioned this before, is about $1,000 a square foot.
Right.
Of that, about 2/3, and this is projected out a couple of years. And so this is the Mass School Building Authority uses that as projected out. That's what they're figuring. And this is not unlike a school. It doesn't have the economy of scale, but maybe it's, simpler construction, but it's not far off. So that does not include land acquisition,
right,
but it includes all the site work, give or take. I mean, 210 College Avenue would almost for sure be more expensive. And then it includes architect fees and then owner's project managers and legal fees. That's a total project cost. So you're talking about $600 to $650 for something like this a couple of years out. And that's why I say $100,000 extra for septic on one site versus another is more or less a rounding error. I'm sorry to say that isn't real money in this day or age. And this is something we can put in, and then this includes a reasonable, a high level of sustainability, if only because that's required by building code. And if it certainly will be increasingly in the future. So do you want, we have some clients who say, yeah, you got to put this in the report. And other clients say, don't put that in the report. What do you want us to do about that?
Janet, do you know if, I believe it was a bullet item in the feasibility study RFQ?
There was cost estimates included in that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we don't do it, is that going to be like a red flag?
I mean, that was our RFQ, versus theirs, but I think it would, if we do estimated costs, I don't know for sure, but
we could reach out to a cost estimator.
I do think that was
because they would say, okay, what kind of structure, what kind of structure,
Right.
what kind of MEP systems, where's the civil engineering plan? So a cost estimator doesn't have enough information to really estimate it from the bottom up, but a cost estimator essentially would do the same thing I'm doing. They would say, yeah, well, it's going to be about $650 a square foot, and they plug in the numbers. So I could talk to a cost estimator. I'm not sure if there's much value in sending them these plans. They could conceivably give a breakdown. There's just there's just so much guesswork on their part.
right.
But I think if we can have an idea of what we may spend on land and versus, like you said, just have an estimate. And that's what it is at this, because it's going to change over the years as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And, depending on all kinds of decisions that we're not even remotely, able to talk about at this point. They would have to make up a structural system. They would have to make up a mechanical system. Or they could ask us and we would make it up. If you said, we really want to see something from a professional cost estimator, we could reach out and see what we could get from them. Or I could write a blurb. We're tied in, we do so much public work. Our firm does public work, on my work with the Mass School Building Authority Designer Selection Panel, to write up a pretty convincing description of where prices are coming in.
Andrew, what do you think?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that. I to be honest, I trailed out a little bit up towards the end there, but we should definitely get a cost estimator on board. Can you just repeat the last end of what you heard? I was dealing with a rambunctious dog over here.
Wait, I'm having a hard time hearing. Was that directed to me?
What you just said, David, kind of repeat what you just said about the costing.
Yeah.
Andrew said he felt that there should be some kind of cost estimator involved, but like you said, they may not have enough information to make that. But what was your alternative recommendation?
Well, so one thing I could do is like PM&C is a cost estimator we use all the time. I could just ask him this question. I could send him these plans and see what they could provide us with. There's enough information to provide anything meaningful. The other is to say, we hear over and over and over, for any public facility that's like this, if prices are projected out, total project costs are about $1,000 a square foot, of which 1/3 is soft costs and 2/3 are construction costs. And we've heard this enough times, both from cost estimators, owners, project managers, and clients, that number is kind of sticking. That's the number everybody's using. Until we know the structural system, mechanical system, and get more information. So Andrew, that's kind of what I was suggesting.
All right. Sorry. Yeah, my dog was eating a corner of a towel. I think it would be a good idea to get a cost estimator involved. I mean, it is tough to price up considering it is just a feasibility study, and they don't have really any finishes information or anything. But this item keeps coming up, at least in my mind.
Yeah.
And people keep asking. So I think if at least at the very least, you'd be able to say, well, we had a cost estimator look at it, and, you know, the range could be really, really broad, but at least, you know, you and this committee would be able to fall back on, if we're presenting something like this again, then, you know, we're going to want to give people a rough idea of the range that they should, you know, be expected to, for this, something like this to cost.
Yeah. Okay. Why don't I do this? I'll send what we have to, as I say, I don't know, Andrew, we use PMC. They do a lot of public projects. I'll reach out to them and see, based on the information we can provide them, what we can get from them.
Great.
Thank you. That I think would be helpful, you know, because as you heard from Tammy and her folks that were communicating to her, I think people just want, I mean, I know this is not for the really that we're doing this for the to get the funding, but I think it's important that we include those approximate costs.
It also adds a little bit of validity to it too. If you say, you know, this number came from a cost estimator, you know, X, Y, and Z, right?
Yeah. I'll say, because that's a double-edged sword. It can make things sound more real than it actually is. And sometimes cost estimators, you know, there's not enough information. They'll give us a 12-page list of questions to answer before they can give us an estimate. But I'll reach out. I'll find out what they say. This question gets asked all the time.
I think it's important for us to do our due diligence for this feasibility study.
Yeah. Okay, let me see. I'll see what I can get in what form that answers more questions than it brings up.
Yeah, I mean, you know. Anyway, okay.
So this is these are good points. In appendix, for example, we could put the total engineering report in the appendix. I don't know if there are any other documents to put in it. So the first question is, we talked about maybe it's black on white rather than white on black, you know, just that this is mostly stuff you've seen, but put into a new context. Does this sound like it makes sense in terms of giving you the product that you need, walking you through to the end, and then focusing? I mean, here's the big one. First of all, the numbers need to be right, but beyond that, you know, are we kind of on the right track here?
I had a recommendation. I think the narrative is good for some of the pages, but I prefer a bullet, you know, kind of a list. I think some of the narratives is too much. I know the necessity of it. I'm not sure that I even like that format, but.
Yeah, and I think this needs to be, I think that's a really good point. This at minimum needs to be broken down into paragraphs. This is not particularly readable. So whether it's bullet points, numbers are just broken into more meaningful paragraphs. And some of them may have there may be 3 paragraphs with a 1-word note about like what that's about, you know.
And David, you have pictures of the current senior center, right? From when
yeah.
Okay. And I'm just thinking if you could tweak this based on our discussion today before you send it to us, and then we can really study it and collect information and feedback and get it back to you. Rather than this version.
Yes.
Talk about a few things just because then people that aren't here are going to tell you what you already know that we've already talked about. So
Yeah.
Is everybody okay with that? Giving them a couple more days to really get us something else?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So we'll try and get this out really early next week. Like drop some photos in, you know, look at the formatting issues, and give a revised version next week as early as possible.
Okay.
Okay. No, this is great.
Yeah, this is a good, we're getting close.
Closer. Yeah. Devlin, do you have any particular questions? You brought up a couple of good points.
No, I think we covered everything.
Yeah.
And yeah, a lot of, like David said, a lot of the formatting will change just as the first run through. So
Yeah.
but any comments if you feel like.
Yeah, that's why I think if you can tweak it a little bit before you we send it out to the whole group for evaluation, you'll get fewer repeated comments from the folks that aren't here. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I look at this and absolutely, I mean, the formatting isn't there. It's too hard to read. There may not be that many words, but the words that are there need to be in a more readable format. So we'll take another pass or two. Devlin will take a pass. I'll take a pass, and then we'll send it back to you.
All right. Okay. You want to stop sharing now?
Yep.
Great.
And just back to Audrey's question a while back, it is in the RFQ that we have a cost estimate on it. So I think we really do need that.
Okay. And as I say, there are cost estimates and there are cost estimates. And I'll talk to our cost estimator and I will pass that on what they think they can do with what they have and, what's meaningful because, no, it's in there and we need to deal with the cost issues, but we'll figure out and we'll get, a way that's as meaningful as possible.
Yeah, I mean, what I don't hope doesn't happen is they round up and, this is worst case scenario and that's what we put in or something. So I just want to make, I don't know, I'm not having worked in this world. So
you mean that things will change, that the situation?
It'll just come in so much higher than it actually, I mean, I don't know if that might be naive on my part, that the estimate could come in so much higher than the reality. It
could. It could. But and this is sort of what I'm saying is there's a vast number of guesses about this. And the idea that you're going to get an accurate cost estimate, there's not nearly enough development on this to get a real or an accurate cost estimate. So.
And that's why it's really hard when Tammy's asking about operational cost once it's built. We need to determine cost and then be able to figure that out.
Yeah. Although they're somewhat independent. It's how many staff do you need? Yeah. They're somewhat independent. But you're asking a really good question. Let me respond. Let me find out what the cost estimators say so that there's some clarity in what you're getting. We could give you 20 pages of cost estimates for each one of these, but it's not particularly meaningful. I
think we just need, what ends up being our top two to be, the cost estimate. Joan,
but they're not going to be any different. They're not going to be any different. If it's a 12,000 square foot building, there's no reason to think that they're any bigger, different, except, maybe there's a very small difference on the septic system. That's the thing. There will not. 210 would be higher. How much higher? We don't know. But rather than you're taking word for it, let me see what I can get from the cost estimator.
Okay. Joan? You're muted, Joan. You fell for it.
My quick comment was that $650 per square foot sounded good. Then you said $1,000 and you said soft, whatever the soft item. I didn't understand that. But I think if we could, come something like that and give that estimate so that it's, at least we're not, again, pie in the sky. It's something that's a little more concrete.
Yeah. Again, I'll reach out to the cost estimator and see. They'll certainly understand the question and how they can help us address the answer.
Okay, great. So I know it's pushing on 2:00, so we're going to have to pretty much wrap up so folks can get back to their work and stuff. Anything else thank you for David for that, where this is exciting. And anything else? I can't wait till the next meeting, or have we covered
Yeah.
everything?
Yeah.
plus?
And in the meantime, we'll be in touch about all this stuff.
Yeah. And we'll schedule the next meeting, which is in 2 weeks.
Yep.
And I know Ed sent me a message, said he had to go. So, okay. So the 23rd is our next meeting at noon.
And
Correct.
can I drop off? I know you have to
Yes.
do your procedures.
Yep. We're good. We're just going to, thank you, Devlin. We're just going to vote to adjourn. So make motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
I second.
All in favor, Darcy,
Aye.
Audrey,
Aye.
Andrew,
Hi.
Janet, I, and thank you. I'm glad we were able to get, and thank you, Joan, for coming and all your input, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Aye.
Bye-bye.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.